This is Gab's collection. Today we're going to be looking at this Offworld Jawa by Hasbro as part of their Star Wars The Black Series line. So, this is clearly how the Jawas appeared in the Mandalorian series. But when they first announced this figure, I don't think they ever mentioned the Mandalorian because they didn't want to I guess, spoil that the Jawas were going to appear in that series. So they just called it the Offworld Jawa, but this is how they appeared in The Mandalorian. The main difference is the red eyes, but we'll get into the figure later. Right now, let's look at the box. So it's number 96, Offworld Jawa, and it says here at the back, ships traveling to and from Tatooine have resulted in some Jawas leaving their desert homeworld. Those that do arrive on new planets continue their old habits and their new surroundings. But their obsessive need for technology still drives them. So clearly, maybe they have some sort of affinity for desert planets because the planet where the Mandalorian meets the Jawas is also a desert planet. Anyway, let's open up this box now. Nothing else of note, really, aside from the usual stuff on these Black Series figures. So first impression, overall likeness, it looks like a Jawa. Obviously, with all these figures, or all the figures of Jawas that we've ever seen, there's usually this sort of what looks like binding, black binding on the inside there, some sort of fabric wrapped around their faces to hide their true faces. But as a matter of fact, on screen, you actually can't see that. You just see a black shadow. You don't really see any detail, any black fabric. It's just black and then the glowing eyes. But for an action figure, it works quite well. This look does. This head, it's a hood. It's a sculpted hood. It's a rubbery material over that black binding, that black wrapped head with red eyes. And the red eyes are really the difference between this Offworld Jawa and your standard Tatooine original trilogy Jawa. So I'm not sure what there is to say aside from that. This texturing is quite well done. It does match the fabric of the actual robe quite well. From a distance, I think at first glance it was really hard for me to tell that this wasn't fabric, this hood. So I think they did a good job with blending this rubbery hood with this fabric soft goods robe. Although some people disagree. I've seen some people who think that it was a terrible idea to mix the mediums. But for me, it works really well. I do like when I have soft goods on a figure like this. It makes it feel more real to me. I know some people have the opposite opinion. But this head, you see all these creases there. They're quite well done. They look quite lifelike and realistic. There's a bit of flash on mine there. Pretty minor, not too bad. But the shape does evoke the Jawa's hood quite well. The texture is done quite well. Now, this belt here, this bandolier, is also sculpted quite nicely. It is a reuse, I believe, as well as the hood is a reuse of the original Black Series Jawa figure. This figure really is just the same thing, except with a soft goods robe instead of the old rubber plastic one, and with a different color scheme. But it's essentially the same figure. I do prefer this, though. If they came out traditional Jawa with a soft goods robe, I would take that over this one maybe. But I do like this one. The red eyes, the gray robes really give it a more different. It's a different look to what we're used to seeing. They look a bit more menacing, I guess, although they're not actually that menacing in The Mandalorian. But it is a different look, and I do quite like it. Now let's talk about articulation, I guess. So this is a floating piece, this rubbery hood. So it doesn't really. The head can't really look up or down. Because of this hood, but even the head under it doesn't feel like there's any sort of mechanism for it to look up or down. So it just goes left and right, which isn't too bad for a Jawa. But if you wanted a Jawa to be sort of trading with one of the taller characters, because this is a short figure, as it should be, but if you wanted to have a Jawa interacting with a taller character, it would be better if they could look up so they could interact with them. But you could accomplish that by tilting up their here at the waist as well. So, arms go out this far. Now, it's a bit hard to see the joints because of the robe, but arms go out this far. Elbows go about 90 degrees there. There's about a 90-degree bend at the elbow. Again, it's hard to see because of this robe. I'm trying to get it out of the way, but is a bit difficult. There, about 90 degrees there. The hands are on a swivel with a hinge, so you can go this way with that hand, and it goes all the way around. Same with the other hand. You can turn at the waist, and I can't really tell if you can go all the way around. I think it's not supposed to, but that's what's happening. But it's mostly just a swivel, really. There's a swivel at the thigh here. You see there the pants that I didn't talk about, but there's pants there and some wrappings for the boots, I guess, or the legs. And there's sculpted pants there. But the thigh swivels like this. It goes out this far, the leg, which is quite far. This is the widest you can go. That's pretty wide. The knee only bends about that far, and that's not far at all. There's really no reason why they couldn't have given us a double jointed knee, because you don't really display your Jawa with the pants showing, so it's not like it's an aesthetic choice for them not to have done a double knee. I guess it was because it's a reuse of an old figure. But if you wanted to have a sitting Jawa, or a Jawa sitting with its legs crossed, maybe, I think that's how they sat in The Mandalorian, if I'm not mistaken. So the Jawas were sitting there, camping around. It would be hard to have them sitting down with these very limited knees. So that's a shame. Get it sort of sitting down like this, but you can't really bend the knees for a more natural sitting position on a chair or on a log, something like that. I can't remember what they were sitting on, if it was rocks or what. With the ankles, initially I thought there was no rocker because mine was so stiff, it was only wanting to go up and down. And then I sort of had to force it a bit, and then some paint flaked off. So the paint was hindering the articulation here. Because there's a rocker there, you can get quite a good stance with this Jawa, wide stance. If I just adjust that. And he seems pretty well balanced. He's more balanced than even the clone Obi-Wan, the Ahsoka Tano Black Series figure. He seems to be the most well-balanced, physically balanced Black Series figure that I've encountered. And I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because this figure is quite stocky. Maybe it's the proportions. But considering it was an older figure that they basically just reissued in a different skin, it's pretty impressive that this is so well-balanced and easy to stand. My Ahsoka Tano was very, very difficult. It is very difficult to stand, so I'm glad that that's not an issue with this Jawa here. Another thing is that the knees also swivel here, which you usually don't see with Black Series. Usually it just swivels up here at the thigh, and then you would have a double knee. So that's a bit different. Now, let's talk about the robe again briefly. It looks like a cheesecloth fabric that I'm quite familiar with, being a doll maker. The thing about this is that they sculpted, well, they didn't sculpt a new one, but they just reused the old Black Series Jawa sleeves, so they wouldn't have to sculpt an original, I guess, sleeveless Jawa under the Jawa arm under this. So it's just the old sleeves. They just put this cloth robe over it, which I guess was fine. There's really no issue with that at all. Here, there's a nice wash on that bandolier to make it look like a leathery material. Those snaps there are painted not the cleanest. The gold on the snaps, they're not the cleanest paint jobs, but they do the job, I guess. And at the back, more of that work on the bandolier. This thing I've just left it as is. I haven't put it in his hand or in this holster here. But this blaster does go in this holster. It also has a nice leather look. There's a lot of tiny, subtle sculpting there. And again, paint on that snap there. Now, this should go in here. I'll just push very gently. Okay, the name of this blaster I can't remember, but it does fit well in that holster. And I just noticed there's also a bit of sculpted detail here. I'm not sure what these symbols are supposed to be, if they're functional or if they're just purely decorative, in universe, I mean. I wouldn't recommend pulling this out because this thin tube there, the thin rubbery plastic, seems a bit flimsy. So I'd rather just sort of push it out from the bottom. And then once you've got it halfway through, you can push it, you can pull it out a bit, but still I'd probably get a pencil maybe, or something you can use to push it out. I would take one of my sculpting tools and just gently push out like that, because I don't want to be stressing this very thin plastic here. I don't know how well that shows up on camera, but that very thin plastic there, I don't want to stress that out. So it's painted cleanly, I guess is the word I could say. There's a bit of weathering on it, sort of rubbed on there, a bit of gray weathering, but I guess it does the job. It just doesn't look like wood, which I'm imagining it's supposed to be. So it's a brown color here. It's a brown paint over this. It just doesn't look like wood, which I'm imagining it's supposed to be. So it's cast in this black plastic, and the brown part is the painted part with a bit of gray wash. Really the main weapon that I associate a Jawa with, I suppose. But I'm just really wary about snapping this hose, because I have had figures in the past where a hose like this has snapped. That was my Jabba the Hutt Clone Wars hookah pipe hose. It did snap because of how much I played with it and how much I unpegged it and pegged it again, but I don't think that should be a problem with this. Maybe, I mean, I hope so. I hope that in recent years they've figured out ways to make these sorts of things durable. And in any case, I'm not going to be playing with this as roughly as I used to play with my Jabba the Hutt play set. And then he also comes with this second blaster, and this one is painted really, really nicely. So let's just stand him up here first. This one, I really like the paint job that they did on this blaster. So it's obviously a metallic look, but there's lots of little dings and scratches and pits and bumps on that, and I'm trying to see if that's sculpted or if it's just paint detail. And I can't really tell. I think it's a combination of both, so there's lots of good texturing on there in the sculpting, but also lots of good weathering detail through paint applications, dry brushing. So it does look pretty realistic. I think it looks like metal, even, you know, like if I didn't pick it up, if I didn't touch it, I would think it possibly could be made of metal. And I really like it. It's a nice accessory. It's a much nicer blaster in terms of detail than this other one. They could have done something similar with this, even though it's a completely different blaster, but they could have done similar weathering, similar dry brushing to get it up to this level. So let's see how this fits in his hand, which I'll also do with the other blaster. I'm not sure if this is a two-handed weapon or not. The hand seems to be soft enough. Okay, so it fits well in his right hand. I'm just not sure how he's supposed to be posed holding this. It's just completely slipping my mind how they used this blaster. And maybe it can be a two-handed weapon, but you can't really get him to hold it with two hands because of the way this is articulated. So I guess you can just have him pointing the blaster like that, or like that, to get this in his right hand also. That's how it fits in his right hand, and it's not the best. You know, they could have sculpted a trigger finger on this Jawa and it probably would fit better, but as it is, he's sort of just gripping the stock. Is that the correct term? But it looks like he's just gripping the stock there, and it doesn't look like he's actually using the weapon. He's just sort of holding it, and he's like not ready to use it. So again, you can hold it on the side there. You can, let's see if I can do something two-handed with this. So I'll try to bend this as far as I can, bend this as far as I can. Yeah, you can get him to hold it with two hands, this one. And I know that in my past videos I've been a bit too forgiving of the flaws in the Black Series. I guess in the Ahsoka video I completely forgot to say that, or I just realized it later on, that she can't really stand that well, and she just kept falling over while I was doing the review. I just wasn't thinking about it because I was enjoying the figure so much. With this one, I'm going to try to be a bit more objective, I guess, but really I just like this figure. Yes, there are articulation limitations that they could have solved because this is a reissue, essentially, of the old Jawa. The blasters don't really fit in the hands as well as they could, and this holster could be a bit looser to allow for this blaster to go in easier, rather than me fearing that I'm gonna break it every time I put it in the holster. But overall, in terms of looks, in terms of price point, price point. With price point, it's a bit of a moot factor, considering that I'm in Australia and I sort of found out about Black Series too late to get some of the earlier figures, so they got a bit expensive. But the thing about living in Australia is that there's always these big tax add-ons and what do you call it? Import taxes and fees, whatever you call those. So a Black Series figure is always more expensive if you're buying it in Australia, or if you're buying it from overseas to get into Australia. So for me, you know, if you were in the US, you say this is $20 US. For me, it always costs about 40 to 50 Australian dollars, which is not cheap considering how many of these I'm buying. But with this Jawa, it was on sale, I guess, because it's not a main character. It's not like a named character. So they were selling it for 27 Australian dollars on an online store. And that included shipping. So I was pretty happy with the price for this. And again, it's a unique look for a Jawa. It's not just your standard original trilogy Jawa that we've been seeing for decades. It's a new, updated version. And the Jawas in The Mandalorian really have a lot of personality. They're quite mischievous, and they talk a lot more. And the way that The Mandalorian interacts with them makes them feel more like characters, like real characters. The way he actually communicates with them, bargains with them. So they're not just these faceless creatures, you know, critters that just scuttle around and steal droids, and you know, they actually feel like characters with emotions and aspirations, I guess. Well, I don't know about aspirations, but certainly emotions, and they have their own individual personalities. And that's one of the things that I like about The Mandalorian, the way that it sort of highlights these background creatures and characters from before, including the Tusken Raiders. The way that The Mandalorian bartered or sort of bargained with the Tusken Raiders really made them feel suddenly like people. Like any other alien in the Star Wars universe, they have a language, you can reason with them, you can communicate with them. They're not just you know, mindless savages, which is how they've been treated in other Star Wars media, but you can actually reason with a sand person or with a Jawa. I'm really happy that they went with this representation of a Jawa from The Mandalorian, because he's gonna look good with my other Mandalorian Black Series figures. So I ordered the Mandalorian himself a few days ago. He should be arriving in a couple of days. And I ordered a Cara Dune as well. And IG-88, I'm gonna turn into IG-11 just by adding a new bandolier. And then I also pre-ordered the child, Baby Yoda himself. So I'm not sure what else there is to say about this. I guess that's it. I don't want to drag this out too long. So my overall conclusion is that I like this figure. It's a nice figure. It is a reissue of the old one, but I'm a new collector, so I didn't even have that old one. And I think I would still buy this over the old one, which is what I did. I didn't buy the old one. I bought this one because I like this better. I like the soft goods. Other people don't, but it flows better to me. It's a more streamlined look rather than having joints all over the place and having a rubbery cloak. So I do like this figure. I like the accessories it came with. I don't like how the hands aren't sculpted to hold the weapons. I don't like how the articulation is limited at the arms. That's really where it matters, and at the knees as well. But overall, it's a good figure. I do recommend buying it. And I'm probably going to do more Black Series reviews, so yeah, I know that I'm a pretty new channel, but I would appreciate if you subscribe to my channel, because I'm going to be doing more of these, and let me know how I can improve as well. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye!